My parents tried to give my inheritance to their favorite daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. A 28-year-old male comes from a family with a convoluted and long history of favoritism. My younger sister, Amy 25, has always been preferred by my parents, especially Dad, over me, starting in our childhood. This partiality only got worse as we grew up. Amy was the golden child. From my earliest memories, our parents threw her an elaborate birthday party, including professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and a petting zoo when I was 5 and she was 2. I had a store-bought cake and a little family supper for my birthday that same year. This helped to define the tone for years to come. The differences became clearer as we aged. Amy always received the newest toys, the greatest clothes, and most attention. I recall saving months of allowance for a new bike when I was 10 years old. Amy wanted one too, hence, she had a fit when she saw it. Rather than educating her about waiting or saving, my parents went right out and got her an even nicer bike than mine. Another arena where the bias was evident was school. Amy's parents attended all of her school functions. While they usually missed mine, I took front stage in the school play in 4th grade. I practiced for weeks, driven by great enthusiasm. My parents arrived an hour late on the night of the play, therefore missing my major scene. They were consoling Amy after she complained of a stomachache. She was good later on. They had simply lost count of time playing with her. Regarding academics, nothing I ever appeared to do seemed sufficient. I joined the math club, often received straight A's in middle school, and even took first place in a regional science fair. Though my parents hardly noticed these successes, they gave Amy a celebratory dinner and purchased her a new phone as encouragement to keep getting better when she scored a plus on one test in her weakest subject. In particular, high school was difficult. With an eye toward their approval, I put myself into whatever activity I could. Along with keeping a 4.0 GPA, I was editor of the school newspaper, debate team captain. Amy coasted through school, hardly keeping a clue's average, and spent much of her time hanging out with friends. I was chosen from our university as one of 2 junior-year applicants to participate in a famous summer program at Harvard. It was such an honor, and I felt great. My dad grumbled and moved the topic to Amy's forthcoming dancing performance when I told the news over supper. At least my mother remarked, "That's nice," but she moved on fast. My parents couldn't bring me to the airport on the night Amy's concert fell on the same day I was leaving for Harvard, as they wanted to see Amy perform. I asked the parents of a friend for a ride. Another agonizing experience was the college application process. I worked months on improving my essays, engaged in extracurricular activities, and SAT preparation. Several elite colleges accepted me, and I was given a sizable scholarship to my ideal college. When I told my parents about this at supper, their reaction was barely passable. "That's good, but don't let it run to your head. Colleges and everything," my dad advised. "Just remember about us when you're off becoming a big shot," my mother said. On the other hand, my parents were quite understanding when Amy barely passed high school and chose not to attend college. They admired her for knowing herself and for defying social expectations, something they never did for me. They even paid for her a car as a graduation gift. Emotionally, this persistent favoritism suffered me greatly. Over my teens and early 20s, I battled anxiety and despair. Beginning therapy in college, I came to realize that my parents' actions were not my fault. Years of effort were needed to develop my self-esteem and learn to validate myself rather than depending on my parents' approval. My immediate family did not help me, yet I still managed to lead a decent life. By the time I finished from college with honors, I had a decent job in finance and even purchased my own house by 27 years old. Though my parents aren't proud of what I've accomplished, here then is where the current drama begins. On Dad's side, my grandfather died not too long ago. He left a sizable estate and was a successful businessman who started from nothing. In his will, he split his possessions equally among his grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins, as well as his children, Dad and his siblings. My portion of the bequest was significant, roughly $500,000. It would have let me invest in my future, pay off my education loans, and perhaps even launch my own company someday. This unanticipated windfall and the chances it could present made me happy. When the will was read, though, my parents clearly became agitated. Later, They drew me aside and said they felt it was unjust I received an equal portion. Amy, who lives in our parents' basement and works part-time at a coffee shop, said she needed the money more since she was suffering. Though stunned, I attempted to keep cool. I clarified that Grandpa made this decision. They had no say in how he decided. They insisted I should act morally and give Amy my fair part. They became enraged when I turned them down and began guilt-tripping me, calling me unappreciative and selfish. Every incident my dad could recall where they had helped me came under discussion. Though I worked part-time to help with finances, he emphasized paying for my medically necessary braces, buying me school supplies the bare minimum, and allowing me to reside at home during college. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the many shopping sprees, and the fact they still support her at 25. The matter got rapidly more serious. Acting as the will's executor, my dad chose to handle things himself, along with her own inheritance. He declared he would be interpreting Grandpa's intentions and give Amy my whole part. He said Grandpa would have wished if he had known our unique situation. I was broken. This was not only obviously illegal, but also a terrible reminder of how little my parents thought of me, pointing out that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was aware of our circumstances. I tried to reason with them. Then, my mother accused me of speaking ill of the deceased by implying Grandpa would have preferred anything else than what my dad was advocating. I mentioned certain memories of Grandpa pushing my academic and career goals, but my parents brushed off these as misinterpretations. They said Grandpa wanted to make sure Amy was taken care of and had privately voiced worrying about her future. They had no response when I asked why he hadn't simply penned the will that way. Then Amy, for her part, was awkward about the circumstances but did not voice criticism of our parents. She merely shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." When I tried to chat to her alone, she obviously wasn't going to be much help. Feeling misled and wounded, I asked Grandpa's widow, my paternal grandma, for guidance. Hearing what was happening, she became enraged. She informed me that my parents had no authority to alter the will and that this was exactly not what Grandpa had planned. Grandma sent some material that clarifies the matter several years ago. Apparently, my parents asked Grandpa to give everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had steadfastly objected, saying he thought all of his grandchildren should be treated equally. He had even included a stipulation in his will declaring that anyone challenging the equitable distribution would lose their portion. Equipped with this knowledge, I challenged my parents. Grandma's disclosure of their earlier attempt to effect the will startled them, saying they were only looking out for Amy's future. Helped, my dad tried to defend it, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandmother acted right away. She got in touch with her will's other executive and attorney. She also got in touch with my dad's siblings, who shared her equally strong indignation at what he was attempting. Taken together, they stopped my dad's scheme and guaranteed that the will would be carried out as stated. Though they are unhappy with me, my parents were obliged to back off. They argued I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others and accused me of turning the family against me. My mother sobbed over how I had split the family and deceived them. I said I had never expected anything from them anyway. When my dad threatened to cut me out of their will totally, now should I accept the inheritance? They are threatening to break off all communication. My dad even went so far as to suggest that I would not be welcome in their house should I inherit it. In a particularly low blow, my mother remarked that my acceptance of the money reveals that I never truly loved them and was merely ready to profit from their passing. The matter splits the extended family. A few of my cousins are encouraging, since they understand the long-standing favoritism and value me for advocating myself. Others believe I should have yielded in order to preserve peace, since family harmony comes first over financial considerations. Although my dad's siblings are definitely on my side, this has strained their relationship as well as my parents. Amy finds herself enmeshed in all this. She confided in me privately that although she feels bad and didn't ask for this, she is not ready to challenge our parents. She's been trained her whole life to depend on them and seek their praise. Hence, I don't blame her totally. Still, a part of me longs she would help me just once. This circumstance has brought out a lot of past suffering and bitterness. I find myself remembering all the times I was passed over or discounted in favor of Amy, the birthday celebrations I missed, the school functions my parents missed, the successes that went unreported. This one occurrence seems to be bringing to a head a lifetime of unfairness. Though the whole affair has caused a great divide in the family, I am keeping my ground and want to take my inheritance as Grandpa meant. My parents hardly talk to me, and family get-togethers have grown awkward. I missed our monthly family meal last week for the first time ever, since I could stand the cold shoulders and accusing glares. Though there is turmoil, a tiny bit of me feels empowered. I'm confronting the unfair treatment by my parents for the first time in my life. I'm declaring my value and refuse to be written off. It's both terrible and freeing at once. Though I think I'm in the right here, the family drama is draining me, something I hadn't experienced since college. I have started having anxiety attacks once more to assist handle all this stress. I'm thinking about returning to therapy. Am I the one who should have refused to comply with my parents' expectations and accepted my inheritance? Should I have simply handed Amy the money to maintain peace? Although I'm bored of being the family scapegoat, I also fear losing my family totally. Any guidance or viewpoint would be much valued. Update. Since my first post 6 months ago, a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and guidance. It truly kept me strong during trying circumstances. Let me start with the legal aspect of things. Many of you advised, and I did see my own attorney. He verified that I had every right to inherit and that what my dad attempted was in fact illegal. He helped me record everything and get ready to act legally should the need arise. Fortunately, things did not transpire as such. Along with my dad's siblings, my grandma and her attorney worked out matters without involving court. I got my whole fortune, and the will was carried out exactly as intended. Because of his will manipulation attempts, my dad was removed as an executive. This was a somewhat demanding process, spanning several weeks. My parents threatened litigation. There were tense meetings and furious phone calls, but ultimately, the law was unambiguous, and they had to back off. Still ongoing, though, the family fallout has been noteworthy. At first, my parents doubled down on their viewpoint. They charged me with being avaricious and neglectful of my sister. They also sought to mobilize other family members against me, disseminating allegations that I had somehow coerced Grandpa into giving me money. Luckily, most of the family saw through their trickery. About 1 month following the will's acceptance, there was one really unpleasant occurrence at a family gathering when my parents showed up unannounced. My aunt was hosting and hadn't asked them to come. They started a scene, starting to shout about how I had taken from Amy and corrupted Grandma against her. My dad became saying I had ruined all these wonderful memories. My mother flung an old photo album squarely at my feet. It was awkward and terrible. It took several relatives to cool things down and persuade my parents to leave. Bless her heart. My grandmother turned out to be my most powerful supporter over all of this. She related tales of how my grandfather had always been proud of my achievements and how he especially wanted to make sure all his grandchildren had equal chances. She even said Grandpa had maintained a scrapbook of my accomplishments, newspaper clippings of academic honors, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from that university play my parents had been late for. This insight was sad as well as wonderful. Grandma also volunteered to straighten the records with the wider family. She organized a family gathering, excluding my parents, laying out the entire history of my parents' partiality, including events had long forgotten or never ever heard about. Having someone at last recognize the unfairness had gone through 4 years was vindicating, but it also reopened old scars about my sister, Amy. She at last found her voice in all this. She came to me personally and apologized for not sticking up for me earlier. After some soul-searching and several long talks with our grandmother, she said she thought our parents' preference was improper, but she had been too terrified to confront it. We discussed our childhood and how it influenced both of us in great length and emotional intensity. Amy admitted that being the favorite child wasn't as wonderful as it seemed. She never learned how to stand on her 2 feet and felt great pressure to live up to our parents' expectations. She told tales of times she yearned to accomplish things on her own, but our parents would swoop in and handle everything for her, therefore depriving her of the opportunity to develop and learn from her mistakes. For our relationship, this talk marked a sea change. We began to mend the sibling link our parents' partiality had broken. Just the 2 of us have been routinely meeting for coffee to discuss and encourage one another through this family crisis. declaring that she was going to pay for college with her inheritance astonished everyone. She claimed seeing me stand up for myself motivated her to start managing her own life. Once she decided what she wanted to study, she registered in a nearby community college first, intending to transfer to a 4-year university. Our parents let out startled gasps. They knew I believed that their babying had not done Amy any favors. The response of my parents to all this has been diverse and changing. They first attacked both of us angrily. They tried to guilt Amy into quitting college to help the family, since they said I turned her against them. They changed strategy when that proved ineffective. After several protracted talks with my grandmother and seeing Amy's great transformation, my mother began to recognize how damaging their actions had been. She has made some hesitant moves toward reconciliation, even beginning therapy to address her problems. She got in touch to apologize, owning that she had been unfair and requesting a chance to right things. It's a slow process, and while inherently hopeful, I'm also keeping strong limits. Sadly, my dad has been less likely to own any mistakes. Still furious, he feels as though he is the victim in all this. He has been chilly toward Amy since she chose to go to college and hardly speaks to me. He has tried a few times to control us, threatening to sell our childhood house should we fail to come to our senses, or forgiving us should we realize we were wrong. Although we are both standing strong, it hurts to see him distance both of his children like this. The dynamics among the extended family have changed dramatically. I now live closer to my dad's siblings, who have been quite helpful, and my grandmother, having heard from my aunts and uncles about handling my dad's challenging conduct over the years, has lessened my loneliness in this fight. Deeper bonds with some of my cousins, who stood by me, have also developed. Starting a monthly cousin meal allows us to all catch up free from the drama of the older generations. For myself, I have been making sensible use of my inheritance, having paid off my college loans. I now feel an amazing degree of financial freedom. Working with a financial advisor, I have assembled a varied investment portfolio. I have also set aside some funds to maybe launch my own company some years forward. Opening a community center with reasonably priced mental health treatments and financial literacy seminars is something I'm investigating. But for me, buying therapy for myself and volunteering to do the same for Amy has been the most significant application of the money. Both of us are learning to set reasonable limits with our parents and are working on healing from our childhood events. Though it's a long road, I already feel as though I'm developing in knowledge and ability to overcome emotional neglect and long-term partiality. This whole process has brought some surprising good improvements into my life. I now know a great deal about establishing limits and defending myself. Though I know I did the right thing, it hasn't been easy, and there are still difficult days. I feel good about myself for resisting guilt and pressure. Among the most unexpected results has been a change in my work path. Dealing with all this family conflict and undergoing therapy has helped me to see my own passion about supporting others who have gone through the same family dynamics. Currently, I'm thinking about returning to school to specialize in adult children of emotionally immature parents and work as a family therapist. I have also been helping youngsters from challenging family homes at a nearby youth facility. Being able to offer the kind of encouragement and support I wish I had had as a youngster is immensely satisfying. I'm even considering creating a scholarship fund for children from the same circumstances using some of my inheritance. My contact with Amy has kept getting better. Once a month, we have a siblings' day when we do something entertaining just the two of us. Our hiking and picnic last month was the most laid-back and connected we've had since we were small children. Without our parents' influence, we are gently reconstructing our connection on our own terms. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging, talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change, though he still says he's done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me. Hence, he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride in us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding. Thus, she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in the same circumstances, I would wish to advise, don't let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours, even if it generates controversy. It's reasonable to defend yourself, though family dynamics might be complex. You are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have to wait to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people, and don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging, talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change, though he still says he's done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence, he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride in us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding. Thus, she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in the same circumstances, I would wish to advise, don't let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours, even if it generates controversy. It's reasonable to defend yourself, though family dynamics might be complex. You are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, it's never too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people, and don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you after my dad died. My mom threw out all of his belongings to make room for her partner and forced me out, saying she didn't want filth from the past. My father died 3 weeks ago following a protracted illness. He had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis a few years back. He fought valiantly, but he soon became unable to continue, and we lost him. It was a great emotional blow for me because I was much closer to my father than to my mother. I, 18 meters, had no idea how to feel, and I was just starting to deal with my sadness when my mother decided to toss me out of the house so she could move in with her boyfriend. Within 1 week, I lost my father and discovered that my mother had been having an affair with a coworker all along. I'm not sure if my father knew about it, but it doesn't make a difference. I was outraged when she brought home her boyfriend just 4 days after my father died, and we had a heated argument. After he left, she told me that this romance had been going on for a long time, basically since my father was diagnosed. She stated I had no idea how tough it was for her to have a sick partner, and though I had no right to blame her for finding love elsewhere, she also stated that she was aware that she would eventually lose her spouse. Therefore, she saw nothing wrong with what she was doing. I informed her that what she did was extremely pathetic. She told me I had to leave, so I paid for it the next day. She didn't want any filth from the past in her home anymore, and she wasn't just talking about me. She and her boyfriend had begun moving a lot of belongings from my father's room in the morning. By the time I awoke, there were crates in the front yard. My mother informed me that I could either take the boxes with me or burn them. Either way, they were all leaving her house. They gave me a few hours to gather my belongings and depart. I opted to spend my time packing my possessions rather than disputing with them. My mother's actions suggested she was too far gone, and I didn't want to sacrifice my dignity by speaking to her. We had pretty well stopped getting along a few months before my father died because she was constantly fighting with him. I didn't believe it was proper to dispute trivial matters and be so mean to him, especially because we knew he wasn't going to make it. After learning of the affair, I lost all respect for her. Therefore, I was relieved to be going. I made a few phone calls, and after a while, my girlfriend said she could speak with her parents and allow me to stay with them for a few weeks until I could get back on my feet and make other plans. I am quite appreciative of that. I've been living with them since my mother booted me out, and they've been quite nice, particularly my girlfriend. We've just been dating for 3 months, and she didn't need to do this, but I'm grateful to her. On the day I left, I grabbed the boxes that my mother had thrown away, which included my father's stuff as well as my own. I figured I couldn't let them burn, since that would mean losing the remainder of what my father left behind. This made my room really cramped due to all of the items, but it was worth it. For the past few days, I'd avoided even glancing at those crates, let alone rummaging through them. The reason was simple. It reminded me too much of my father, and I was not prepared to confront it. I knew I'd end up bawling on the floor, since I already miss him so much, so I'd been avoiding it like the plague. However, 2 days ago, I made the decision to go through some of the boxes. Regardless of how difficult it was, I was extremely lucky because the first box I chose was full of documents and documentation from my father's room from before he was taken to the hospital in his final weeks of life. He had been working from his room in the house because he was in no fit state to go out every day. My father worked as a tax consultant for a large corporation, so there was a lot of paperwork involved. I didn't comprehend much of it, so I put it aside. I got to the bottom of the box and found a blue manila file with my name on it. That was it. What I discovered there is going to finish my mother, and I'm here for it. Going through the contents of that folder, I learned that my father had really left a will, which my mother was presumably unaware of, or perhaps she did and was just not telling the lawyer. Not only did I uncover the will, but also several additional documents, including the house deed. I found out that the house did not belong to both of my parents, but rather to my father. After reading the will, I learned that my father had left the house and all of the money in his account to me. My mother had only received his car, which was still a huge deal because my father drove a lovely automobile, and she had taken ownership of their holiday property. I recognized my mother had no right to kick me out of the house because it did not belong to her now or at any moment. It was originally my father's, and it is now mine. So far, my father's lawyer had informed me that his assets would be frozen until the court determined how they would be distributed. However, as soon as I discovered those documents, I called him and informed him of my findings. I invited him to my girlfriend's house and asked if I may move back into my own house, as my father's will clearly specified that the house belonged to me, not my mother. He affirmed that I was free to do so if I wanted, and that my mother had no authority to kick me out without appropriate notice. That was everything I needed to know. The lawyer would manage the will's execution, but I planned to address the problem with my mother. I called her right away and informed her I'd found my father's will. He had indicated that he would leave me the house and all of the money in his bank account. She remained silent for a few minutes before saying it didn't matter to her. But now that the tables had been turned, I asked her to leave the premises. The house never belonged to her, and she had done nothing to deserve it. She'd been nasty to my father, and now she was being horrible to me. I informed her that I wanted her out by the end of the week. That's when she began groveling. To be honest, I anticipated her to argue with me because that is how she has always been, argumentative and unpleasant to everyone around her. Instead, she begged me not to say or do anything because she had convinced her partner to move in by promising to handle everything. Apparently, her coworker was married but had recently filed for divorce, and his ex-wife was demanding a large sum of alimony, which was understandable given that he cheated. He was concerned about it, and my mother promised him that she would manage everything for him. This meant allowing him to live with her so he didn't have to worry about housing or rent and could concentrate on his divorce. If I approached them and stated that the house did not even belong to her, she would be screwed. So, if I talked to her boyfriend, she would not only be homeless, but also alone. I'm not a cruel person, so I told my mother she could keep behaving as if she had the means to help her partner. But I didn't want her to live in my house anymore. I vowed not to say anything about what she had told me as long as she agreed to leave house by the end of the week. I didn't care where she went. All I needed was for her to leave so I could return to my home. Then she started telling me it wasn't fair, it was blackmail, and I couldn't do this to her. I reminded her of how cruelly she had treated me and us a few days before, so it was absurd that she wanted me to consider her circumstances now. I did not believe I was being unjust. After disagreeing with me for a while, she began crying on the phone, saying she couldn't believe I was treating her like this simply because she wanted to be happy in her life for once. She claimed she didn't want to marry my father, but she was already pregnant with me and her family had pushed her to. She claimed my father had never treated her properly, had always been preoccupied with his work, and had never made enough time for her. She was only trying to have a good life with her partner, and the only reason she kicked me out was because she knew I was like my father. I wouldn't stand in the way of her happiness. She stated that my actions were proving her point. I didn't know what to say at this point, so I told her she had 1 week and hung up. Since then, I've been feeling rather guilty. I'm not sure why, but hearing her cry over the phone made me feel horrible. I'm not sure if this is because I'm doing anything wrong, or if it's simply because I'm a sensitive person who can't bear hearing people cry. I'm bewildered. So I'm here to ask, why did you tell my mother and her boyfriend they had 1 week to vacate the house? Edit. I don't have any family in this state, so I had to rely on my friends for aid. I've spoken with my grandparents because I'll be attending college in a few months and will need their support to handle expenditures. After describing the issue to them, they severed relations with my mother. She's probably not worse off for it because she never got along with her own parents and only had a cordial relationship with her in-laws. Regarding the will, I'm not sure why my father left the house and all of his money to me or why he hadn't discussed it with his lawyer. I did ask my father's lawyer about it, and he revealed that he had been urging my father to prepare a will since he was diagnosed, but my father kept claiming he would do it later. Now, it appears that he left behind a holographic will because there were no witnesses or lawyers involved, which may make it simpler for my mother to fight it. We'll deal with it as it arises. Fortunately, in our state, even such wills are regarded as genuine, and I'm thinking my father was aware of this. As for why he left the most essential stuff to me, I'm guessing it's because he presumably drafted this document while at home and my mother had been arguing with him over nothing in particular. She was only arguing with him because she could, and he couldn't just leave her no matter how upset he was. I suppose that is why he took this decision, and to be honest, I believe it was a good one. To address your questions, I don't know my father's specific motives, but here is my theory. Update 1. Hello. I am still living with my partner, and after reading the comments, I have decided to rethink my decision. I will continue to insist that my mother leave the house, but I have chosen to modify the terms of my agreement. After I posted the last update, many of you urged that I consider the possibility that my mother will fight the will, which would cause me a lot of grief. I thought about it, and you were correct. I didn't think about it at first, so I called my mother back. I informed her that I was now willing to give her 6 months to locate a place and move out of the house. She looked astonished when I mentioned it because we hadn't spoken since our last conversation. She didn't have an explanation for the change of heart, but I did tell her that since I was giving her 6 months, she needed to swear not to fight my father's will. Hopefully, 6 months would be enough time to verify the legality of the will in court, and then we could begin dividing the assets. I suppose 6 months would also allow my mother's boyfriend enough time to finalize his divorce. Personally, I would have liked to generate a lot of hardship for my mother and ask her to leave within a week, making sure she felt as bad as I did. But hey, I need to, right now. It's more vital for me not to act rashly, because that will only lead to difficulties for me rather than her. She stated she would think about it before agreeing to anything, so we'll see what she says. Update 2. Hello. 3 days ago I told my mother that if she promised not to fight the will, I would let her stay in the house for another 6 months. I was leaving for college in 3 months anyhow, so I assumed I'd ask my grandparents to send me money so I could buy an apartment. I did not want to burden my fiancée by staying with her for so long, but her parents insisted that I do so. My girlfriend and I have only been together for 3 months, but we genuinely love each other, so she said the same thing. With my living arrangement fixed, I wasn't in a hurry to have my mother leave the house because it didn't make sense. I hoped my mother would agree to my demands so that I could have my father's lawyer sign off on them. If she signed a legal contract, she wouldn't be able to back out. I was expecting to hear from her with good news, but instead, she called me today and asked if I expected her to sign any paperwork or contracts for our agreement. I instantly replied, yes, since I did not want to mislead her, and to be honest, I did not trust her. This was a given. She paused for a few seconds before telling me that she was not interested in signing a contract. That annoyed me because it implied that if she knew she had to stick to it or face the repercussions, she was hesitant to make any promises. I was upfront with her, telling her that if she wasn't willing to sign a legal agreement, my offer was off the table. I told her I didn't trust her at all and she shouldn't be shocked, insisting that I was unquestionably my father's kid. I had no idea what that had to do with anything, because neither my father nor I had ever done anything that could be considered untrustworthy. The only thing she had against my father was that she had been forced to marry him because she became pregnant with me, and my grandparents decided it was best to proceed with the marriage. That is not my fault, nor is it my father's fault. If she didn't want to marry him, she should have stood up for her rights. Besides, I am not even sure how true her narrative is. I asked my grandparents about it, and they stated they hadn't really pressured her, but they had only encouraged her not to raise me on her own because she was so young at the time and my parents appeared to be in love. Both of my grandparents suggested they marry, but there was no pressure on them. The other issue my mother faced with my father was that he worked too much. I don't believe that's a major issue, because of course, he had to work. My mother didn't work for the first few years of their marriage and finally started working about 7 years ago. She obtained the position since one of her friends and her friend's spouse founded the company. Otherwise, she would not have found the position she currently brags about. She claims to be an independent lady, but that is only because my father has always supported her. She had no right to say she didn't trust me because I'm my father's son. I was annoyed, so I told her she could do anything she wanted, but because she refused to sign a contract, I wanted her out of the house. I hung up before she could say anything. She tried phoning me numerous times after that, but I was too annoyed to speak with her. She hasn't called in the last half hour, but I'm confident she will. I will only talk to her after I've calmed down. Update 3. My mother did not call me again following our last talk. As I described in my previous report, I waited for her to call for the next 2 days, but she just did today. I was nervous because I wasn't sure what to anticipate. To be honest, on the one hand, I genuinely wanted her to agree to the deal I proposed in which I let her reside in the house for 6 months until she could make alternative arrangements, in exchange for her not contesting the will. I thought I was being fair, but after our last disagreement, I wasn't sure she would agree. When she called today, I tried to be kind and civil because this wasn't just about her. I also had something to lose. I was expecting positive news, but as soon as I picked up, she informed me that she had made her decision. She opted not to sign any contracts. Instead, she was determined to fight the will, and she had even consulted with a lawyer about it. I was taken aback because this obviously meant she would no longer be residing in the house, which belonged to me. I told her that if she contests the will, she will no longer be able to live in my house. I hoped that would bring her back to her senses, but she said I had no authority to kick her out because the will had not yet been ratified. She had a point, but she also had no authority to kick me out because we were in a bit of a gray area right now. I told her we'd probably have to live together until the probate was completed. That concept clearly made her uncomfortable, and after a few seconds, she informed me she'd look for a place to live, but she'd take her time because I had no right to tell her what she should do. I assured her again that she could take as much time as she wanted, but that I would be back by the end of the week. She began ranting, accusing me of being a bother and claiming she had done nothing to deserve the harassment I was subjecting her to. I almost laughed because her claim that I was bothering her was the biggest joke of the century. She kept attempting to rant, but I hung up because we had nothing else to talk about. She'd made her decision, and I didn't think I could change it anymore. I'm going to do what I believe is right, and she can't stop me. Her partner, who is going through his own divorce, will not be much assistance to her either. I, on the other hand, have my family, girlfriend, and friends on my side. In fact, I believe I will tell her boyfriend the truth about my mother because I have been withholding information for far too long. Since she has made up her mind, I have decided to be an inconvenience, and there is no reason to keep this a secret any longer. Update 4. I did it. I informed my mother's lover the truth about the situation at the house. I don't think he had any notion until recently, which is strange considering he lived with my mother. This is a major deal to keep from your boyfriend, especially since she was still in contact with me, and I'm sure he would have asked about it, but I assume she's pretty adept at keeping secrets. After all, she hid her affair for a few years. It was not difficult to reach him. I just searched him up on Facebook and sent him a message containing proof. I also explained why I was telling him the truth now and not earlier because I had been negotiating with my mother. When she ran out of other ways to contact me, she set up a fake email account and sent me a message from that address. In the email, she said that I should be pleased now because I had caused so much drama between her and her boyfriend for no reason. She claimed he had decided to leave her and return to his wife to attempt to work things out, blaming her for the entire situation, which, to be honest, he was correct about. I'm not really sure what she's furious about. The message was lengthy, and it contained warnings that she would make sure I paid a high price for this. All I could think was, she can bring it on. Truth be told, she no longer scares me. I've already lost all I could lose, and there's only one direction to go up. So, I'm looking forward to the court case. Update 5. Hello, guys. I haven't kept you updated on what's been going on in my life over the last year, and I believe it's time I did. As I previously stated, I was looking forward to the court process, and my mother did end up fighting the will. The case got to court, and my father's attorney and I fought as hard as we could. Long story short, after 8 months, we eventually received a favorable ruling. The will was validated and upheld. This happened 2 months ago, and I'm still really pleased with it. My mother had to give up the house, and we no longer communicate with her. I have no idea what she is up to, but I am delighted she received her karma. Even her own parents have stopped communicating with her, so I'm pretty sure she's not living a joyful life right now. My neighbors told me that on the day she moved out, her boyfriend came to help her, so he crawled back to my mother to make things right, and she gratefully accepted him back. Honestly, I'm pleased they're together. They deserve each other. I'm confident my father is beaming down at me from heaven because I've demonstrated resilience, strength, and a willingness to stand up for what is right. I'm in college now, set to begin my 2nd year. My grandparents are currently supporting me financially, and they will continue to do so until I find work, for which I'm glad. I know many of you are intrigued about my relationship. She also attends college, and we meet on weekends. In fact, we're arranging a little break for just the 2 of us this weekend. Everything else felt easy. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.